Hey everyone, and welcome to live stream number 6. Today we're talking about how to evolve as a CTO from being a tech expert to a strategic leader. And let's shift into the agenda and see what's in store today. So first we'll talk about the ambiguity of the CTO role. We'll talk about what it means when you are a tactical CTO, the shift that you need to make into a strategic role and why that's important. I'll give you the transition framework that you can use to get there, and then I'll also give you a couple of practical application steps from my toolkit. And if that all sounds good, let's get right into it. With part 1, setting the stage. Let me start with a story, because stories are always fun. So as a team lead, I noticed that the contributions that you're making in the team when you're writing code are 1x. You can only fix so much even if you're a brilliant programmer. What's more important, especially when you're leading a team, is how well the team performs, and designing the processes and growing a team can actually 10x or 100x your output on the team. So if you just write code, sure, you're gonna get stuff done. But if you design a process for that team, it will accelerate your trajectory by a lot, and the team's trajectory. So your focus is to not work in the box as an individual contributor, but to design the box, to work on the box, to design the processes, to the strategic thinking, the tech strategy, to align with the stakeholders, with the business goals, and to devise a strategy that will get you the most impact with the customers. Now, how I got into this is quite interesting. Basically, the first time I felt something like that was when I came onto a project where I just became the team lead. I was hired as a senior engineer and got into a team lead position. And I realized that there's no one who's holding the product requirements for that project, for that product that we were developing. So it was like, okay, I could just write code to some spec that was somewhere, but that's gonna have zero impact on the business. We're actually still losing money. And the question was, if nobody's owning that, well, I should step into that missing void, plug the leadership gap there, and figure out who's using it, who are the customers, what's the pricing strategy, and how do we design the tech. Do we even need the tech? Because if all those other questions are not answered, then why keep something running and operating and losing, making a loss? So that was quite interesting because it was new for me, but I always had a craving for being close to the business and to understand business requirements and pricing models. So I started working closely with our copywriter, with the product, with the CEO of the company, and said, hey, there's a project that nobody's owning. Let's figure out the impact. Let's find out a strategy of how do we price that and how do we ship that to customers. So that was my first dip into working on the box and not in the box. And then going forward and changing the companies, I realized that whenever, like at my latest company, where I was director of engineering, that's all I did, was just worked on the box. Basically assembling teams who were then executing the projects and doing the hands-on work themselves. It doesn't mean that you're always like not, hands on the code, that you don't go in and check what's going on, but it's the majority of the time, what's the bar, where do you want to be, and what the reality is, right? The CTO role is a confusing one, because there's CTOs from all over the spectrum. So let's dive into it and discuss the ambiguity of the role of the CTO. What do I mean by the ambiguity of the role of the CTO? So you have different types of the CTO, and this is by far not even the only definition, because there's many different verticals or aspects that you can look at it. But let's say from a growing company, the first is the engineer. So maybe that's a startup who's building the first MVP, and they have a lead engineer who's very much hands-on building that prototype. Maybe they're the only engineer at the company, but they have the title of the CTO, and they're mixed online with other CTOs, and they're doing CTO things, but they're doing everything from strategy all the way to actually writing code and pushing to production. Now this is controversial because, you know, some of my colleagues believe that a CTO should not be even called a CTO unless they are a strategist. I disagree. I think the CTO is a flexible role, and I think that it's important that we recognize the reality of the situation, and that we educate, and that we find ways to move down towards a more strategic / visionary role. As the team rapidly expands, this engineer is faced with a new problem, because now they need to deal with hiring, with building a team, and it doesn't mean that they will have enough capacity to work hands-on the code anymore. They need to become the person who works on the box and designs the processes and the team itself. And this is the part where they become the chief problem solver, because they have a lot of knowledge of the system, of the architecture, of the way things are built together. New people are coming in, but they still haven't delegated the work to the team. So it's important to evolve into a strategist where you're not working in the box anymore, but on the box itself. And the last stage is the visionary. That's reserved for big companies, and the visionary, I mean in the sense of there's a VP of engineering, and the CTO is just looking what's next for the company 5 years, 10 years, 3 years down the line, right? Yes, so we start with an engineer, they get promoted, and they're now the CTO of that company. They have the most knowledge about the system, and more budget is now being spent on tech, and the tech team expands. And the CTO evolves from the engineer to the chief problem solver. And it means that now they're dealing with problems hands-on. There's a lot of requests because the company is growing. The processes are weak or non-existing because everyone was used to having only 1 or 2 engineers. And the team that's joining in is hungry for mentorship, for getting knowledge, for being productive, for making changes. Maybe they have a lot of legacy. And it starts feeling a little bit like this. This is fine. Everything's on fire, but we're somehow struggling. At that stage, there's a lot of demands from all sides. Infrastructure, customer support, marketing has a lot of requests. Mental overload is high. But what intrinsically you know when you're in that situation, when I've been in that situation, is that I should be focusing on mentoring, hiring, coming up with strategies, defining processes, and not being stuck in this reactive loop. You want to get out of the reactive loop and be proactive. But how do you do that? Here we shift into the part 2. So how does the new landscape look like when you're the chief problem solver in a company? It means that most of the time you're working still in the box because you know you have the most knowledge. You accumulated, you know about the infrastructure, you have the deployment keys, you're handling the accesses for new team members that are coming in. You're writing deployment scripts. You're the one who's responsible for pressing the deploy button. And when things go wrong, it's you who gets called, either by the CEO trying to explain what's going on, or somebody on your team who cannot figure out how to fix something, and they need your help. Now, when you are in this situation, it can feel really good because you are the one who unblocks everything. And you really feel that you're important at the company. Because when you're sick or not available, it means that the whole company is like, where is Ty? Unfortunately, you cannot clone yourself, so this doesn't scale. You need a different strategy. And that strategy is to stop working in the box and start working on the box. Which means that you need to transfer knowledge, mentor other people. You need to define a strategy, define long-term goals, set up the processes, delegate. And working on the box does scale. So you want to go from the chief problem solver to the strategist. Now let's talk about the how. Well, first of all, you want to set up some processes, because if everything is like it comes to my table and then you're handling it, it's not going to go very well. The second thing is, and a very difficult thing, is letting go of control, of the need to have everything, all the accesses, every checks, the micromanagement. And the last part is you need to trust the team to do the right thing according to your vision. And that means that you first need to build a team, because if you don't have a team and you're alone, then of course you're going to have to handle all the requests. But as the team starts growing, the challenge is how do you shift all the responsibilities that you're doing from yourself onto your team and mentor them so that they become proficient at it and more productive, so that you free up space to do strategic, impactful work that can 10, 100x your business, instead of spending all your day reactively solving problems that come onto your desk. So if you want to learn more about how to build a fantastic tech team, here's a few principles that I employ. So my secret sauce is fun, that you build fun, trust, excellence, mentorship, camaraderie, a sense of belonging and alignment towards a vision into your team. And I did a podcast / live stream on it. So if you go on my YouTube channel, you can find that and we go more in depth there. So I'll leave the team building part out right now and we'll shift into part 3. But first, I'll take a sip of water and check if there's any burning comments. All good. It seems like everyone's content and happily watching and following along. So let's go into part 3, the framework. So before you start making any changes, it's important to know where you are. It's important to analyze opportunities and to identify any weaknesses. So phase 1 is analyze. It's important to record all the requests that you are currently handling, all the tasks that only you can do right now, and to record your time using time boxing. And we'll get into that a little bit later. I'll show you how I do this. And then SWOT analyze your team to identify who needs mentoring, who's the perfect fit for what, and how to delegate effectively to them. So based on that first phase, first step, you put out the fires, you carve out time for strategic work, and you delegate. It means that you need to avoid the urgency trap. When requests are coming in and people are panicking because they don't know what to do, they don't know what the process is. So they're like, Ty, please help, my computer broke, my printer is not working. Ty, we have a bug in production. Ty, the database is down. Okay, maybe fix that, but you need to triage things. Are they important and urgent? Do them now. Like production is down, by all means, fix that first. Printer is not working, fine, give it to somebody else. But the important thing is you need to have a list of things that you can delegate and know who to delegate it to, so that when a printer breaks, you know who's responsible for fixing the printer. And it shouldn't be the CTO. The next step is effectively organize the team, and that goes into this whole know their strengths and weaknesses. So it's important that you identify what those are. And then you need to transfer that knowledge to the team. So when you were before in the fix it yourself mode, where you were hands-on fixing bugs, it's the equivalent of giving them the fish, right? Don't give them the fish. Teach them to fish. So triage whatever comes in, delegate it to the person who is the most capable of doing it, and then support them so they learn your steps, how you do it, so that they can do it independently the next time. And that requires work. It's not easy. And it means that when things are burning, it's going to get harder before it gets better, because you need to put effort into making it better, to teaching other people, to learning how to delegate. And then once you have that process in place, things get easier, because now your team can take a load of you and you don't need to do everything yourself. So that was phase 2. Phase 3. Now that you've effectively analyzed what your opportunities and shifted and delegated more of those responsibilities to your team, you should work on tasks that require C-level attention and have 10 to 100x return. It means working on the strategic stuff, on the business requirements, on tech strategy, on talking about what do we need build next, about designing processes, improving the hiring process. So phase 3, now you have the time. It's time to use it and put it to good work. So identify the opportunities for tech, build a tech strategy, improve the processes, plan them, and so on. Now we come into part 4, the toolkit. So before we go into that, let's see if we have some burning questions. Nothing yet. Perfect. So let's talk about the toolkit. I'm going to give you 2 things today that you can implement immediately. First is retroactive time blocking. So basically, on step 1, when I said you need to analyze where you're spending your time and what are the things that only you can do. This is a fantastic tool that I found works really well. And here's an example that I just made up, so that you don't see my exact calendar, but that's what I'm doing. I make a plan on the calendar of my to-dos of the things that I need to do and I want to do the next day, the next week. And then things don't happen according to plan, because there's always stuff coming up and you need to shift your focus to something that's more urgent. And the important thing is, until you have that, you have no knowledge about where your time is going and what kind of task you're spending on. And I don't like Jira, I don't like time tracking tools. I like the calendar because it's right there. So the way you do this is you have a different calendar for calls, meetings, tactical work, strategic, solving problems. Depends on, it needs to be tailored to you, so you make it work for you. And then you schedule things that are in, so schedule like meetings are scheduled in advance, and then you're going to be left with gaps. You fill those gaps with the things that you want to do. And then as the day progresses, you retroactively fill in what you were actually doing. So for example, in the morning, checking emails, then urgent bug fix came up, then we had a sync meeting. But the important thing is that you accurately backlog how the time was spent. And if you also separate it by the calendar type, so that you can see, okay, you look at the calendar and see, 80% of the day I was fixing bugs and, plugging in printers and doing code reviews. Very tactical. Because in a month or 2 or 3, once you start implementing these changes, you want to take a look at your calendar again and be like, I got a solid 3-hour chunk of strategic work today. That's big success. So that's retroactive time blocking. Now, the next tool in your toolkit that you can use is impact gauge. So this is how you can gauge where, like, you use the calendar as the basis, and then end of each day you want to check where you were on, let's say, start of the day you want to check where you want to be strategically. And maybe it's good that I explain what you're even looking, because I just realized you don't have any context for this. So this is how I list tasks from low impact to high impact, and the things that are lower on the list are tactical things, chores, right? If you're the CTO and you're fixing the printer, that's probably a low impact activity. If you're defining long-term strategy, that's probably going to have a high impact on your company. And then the 2 arrows are where you want to be for that day, and this can float up and down. You basically just define it yourself. Just say, you know, based on the current demands or what the team needs from me, I want to be somewhere in the middle or somewhere relatively high, because I delegated all the stuff, nothing's burning, focus can be on the strategic stuff. And then the yellow arrow is end of day, you check, I had a plan to be mostly strategic, a lot of stuff came up, so I was actually more in the middle. And then you kind of save these things so that you have a record of seeing how high you position your target and where you actually end up. And here it's important again to make it work for you. And I just realized that I copy pasted these separate calendars, so don't let that confuse you. What you want to do is define the task according to yourself and what you want to do. So these are not even my personal ones, they're just something that ChatGPT generated. So the point is, put your own stuff on this low impact, high impact, make your own list of activities that you're doing. So if you're, if you want to be working primarily like mentoring the team, fixing the hiring process, like put those things on the list and rearrange them according to what you think is the highest impact for your business, for your work, and where you want to be. Those are your targets. And then continuously, maybe also check yourself a couple times a day. Where am I on this scale? Should I be delegating more? Because sometimes you're like, okay, I want to do strategic work, but requests keep coming in. At some point, you just need to say, okay, you know what? It's enough for today of the tactical, time to go strategic, and you bump yourself up. So those are the 2 tools that I'm using, and a little bit shorter presentation today, but that's how you can take your first steps into getting from a place where you're overwhelmed and working on the strategy and going into a more strategic role. So if you just skim through it really fast for the people who joined late and give you a short recap. So when you're the engineer at the company, you're doing mostly tactical stuff. As the company expands, you become the chief problem solver. When you're the chief problem solver, all the requests come to you, and you have a team, but you haven't delegated all the tasks. And this is like a really important inflection point. Everything is on fire, and you need to go from working in the box to working on the box, so that you become from the chief problem solver the strategist. And you do that by setting up processes, letting go and trusting the team, The framework is that you see where you are, identify opportunities, identify weaknesses, analyze what is currently going on and where the opportunities are. You need to put out the fires so that you carve out time for strategic work, you delegate ruthlessly to your team, and you teach them to fish. Give them all the support that they need so that they become self-proficient. Because you want to work on tasks that are C-level attention and have 10, 100x return on your time, as opposed to just individually contributing. So you need to strategize to make that happen. And the part of the toolkit is those two things that we've been discussing: retroactive time blocking, which is this, where you backlog all the activities on different calendars, and the impact gauge, where you define all the activities that you could be performing in your CTO role, all the way from highly strategic to basically chores, and then you see where you are every day. And with that, let's kick it off into the QA and see if there's some questions. Bring it on. What do you want to know? Let me open the feed. Don't be shy. So yeah, while we're waiting for questions, I see a thumbs up. Thank you. Thumbs up to you as well. Thank you for joining me live on this live stream. If there's questions, I'm going to hang out for a little bit more and tell you about the plan for the new year. So it's going to be really exciting, because after New Year I'm going to bring some guests onto this live stream. So we're going to be discussing leadership. We're going to be discussing about how to grow tech teams, and about the CTO role in general. We're going to be also talking about hands-on experience from people who have gone through this transition many times. Have my fellow CTOs who are strategic leaders and who are also mentoring other people in how to do that transition. So it's going to get exciting after New Year. So stick around for that. Let's see, not sure if I'm gonna stream next week. Probably yes, it's the 22nd. Pre-Christmas stream. Maybe we find some interesting Christmassy topic. Actually, I need to find some other solution for these comments, because I always see that, like, I got a notification, then Cedric asked a question, but when I click on the comment section, it's not actually reloading it, which is weird. Okay, now it's there. So Mariana asks, will the recording be available? Yes, all the recordings are on YouTube and it's being live streamed there. I'll put a link to YouTube in the comment section below, and you can watch all the old live streams from 1 to 5 on my YouTube channel, and also like the short videos that I post there. Cedric asks, how long did it take to transition from engineer to CTO and between the different profiles of the CTO? You're probably asking how long it took me, and the answer is it depends, because it's again a question of where on the CTO. Like I'm now confidently stepping into more strategic roles, but as my evolution of, let's say, a CTO is I would say that I'm now at the stage where I'm confidently designing teams, and that took many years. Because first of all, when you dip into the toes, into leading a team and figuring out all the intricacies that go into actually mentoring others, into stakeholder management, it can be quite complex. And for me, it was somehow a natural progression. I didn't have a clear goal of I want to become a CTO, and if I did have that in mind, I would work sooner on a pathway to get there, and I would get more mentorship, so that process can shrink down. You don't need to take 10 years to grasp all the strategic aspects, although the more projects that you do, and the more, for me, I think that what helped me is that I switched companies quite often, and some people would say, okay, you're just jumping from one thing to the next. For me, it was always a learning opportunity, and seeing when I stop growing and stop contributing in a meaningful and impactful way on the business, then it's time to move on. And that has allowed me to gain a lot of experience in different areas, from being in an agency to being in a startup, to designing teams, now as director of engineering, like building whole teams, and then finally going freelance and saying, okay, I have all this knowledge, I wanna now share it. So to go from engineer to CTO, it's important to work on the soft skills, because the things that make you a really good engineer will not make you a good CTO. Of course, you still need to have like a good grasp of technology and a good grasp of software architecture, design principles, but you also need to learn how to design teams and how to improve them. Hope that answers your question. I know I've been rambling probably a little bit more around the topic than. Okay, let's see, any more questions? Yeah, I think the next stream, like this stream that I was doing today, was something that I think is really important, because a lot of the people that reach out to me are in that state where maybe they have a company where they're trying to grow an engineering team, and that's why they're also looking for a fractional CTO, because you can take two approaches to it, right? You probably have an engineer that has the title of the CTO inside the company, but you want to teach them the soft skills and the strategic thinking that goes into leading a team. So that's why they're looking for fractional leadership, and that's where a fractional CTO can come in handy, so that you mentor that person to step into a more strategic role. And I found that basically this framework works really well, because it worked well for me. So that's been the amazing part. So that's why I wanted to switch up the live stream. But I still want to talk about AI and how AI tools are changing the software development process. And I think that's going to happen next week on Friday. I'll do some preparation for that, but basically GitHub Copilot and ChatGPT, plus some others, right, are quite rapidly changing the way that we develop software, and adopting them as a team on a larger level can be really beneficial, where it's not just like engineers are dabbling with ChatGPT. If you actually embrace AI and say, okay, how do we use it? How do we use these amazing new tools as a team to accelerate our progress, and where we can get 5x, 10x, 100x gains, then that becomes really impactful. So there are good ways in how to use them. There's also bad ways to use them that don't give you as much results. So that's what I want to explore next week. So let's see, any other questions, people? Let me know. How did you enjoy it? What did you learn today? What can you apply from what you've learned? As I mentioned, the recording is on YouTube, so it's been really nice to stream for you all again, and yeah, I'm excited for what's coming in 2024. Okay, I think there's no more questions. Let's see. I can see people are still in the stream, and the counter's still going up, so the thing is, I'm kind of running out of monologues to do, so I think I'm gonna wrap up now. It's been fantastic to talk to you again and tell you a bit about how to transition from a tactical role into a more strategic one as a CTO, as a engineering lead. And if you're a founder or a CEO and you want to share that with your CTO, please do. I think the more people that know about the different stages of the CTO's journey, and to demystify this process of what is a CTO and how the evolution needs to go for a business to have success, because there's all those roadblocks as you're growing. You have a roadblock just hiring the first few people, then you have a roadblock when you go past 10 people. It will change again, because you don't have just one team, you need to effectively split them up into units. So that requires a different approach and different tactics, and it's important to have the skills and the knowledge to do and to execute that transition well if you want your business and your tech team to succeed. And ultimately, that's all we want: to be successful, to grow, and to learn. So on that bombshell, it's time to end. It's been lovely having you with me, and I wish you a fantastic weekend. I'll see you next week. Don't forget, we're talking about AI, how to adopt it in your team for massive gains. Yeah, have a lovely weekend, and I'll see you soon.